Before I start tonight, I have to apologise to all the viewers. I meant to set this up earlier on the day at work. I got too busy and then stuff happened after work and I completely forgot to set it up. So it's just been thrown up at the last minute. Some people who might come back and watch it might miss it live when they wouldn't have if I had been more organised. So I apologise, and I apologise to Wally, I know, because I didn't get a link to do this to him until about 5 minutes ago. But Wally, how are you doing?
Aye, all good, mate. Aye, it's been a while again, but obviously busy is per usual, isn't it?
I felt this is it. But the good thing about there being a wee bit between the academy pods is, Wally, that there's plenty to talk about.
Aye, look, there's always something going on at Rangers, whether it's in the first team or in the academy. So I suppose it always keeps us busy if there's, obviously the new player came in not that long ago for Everton, which we've had a wee chance to look at him a couple of times, and obviously there's been chatting about some players potentially moving on, etc. So yeah, look, there's always something to talk about, and that's what we're here for tonight.
Exactamundo, and I'm going to throw it to you. Where do you want to start? Do you want to start under 18s? Do you want to start with the B team?
No, that's fine. If you want to start with 18s, that's fine.
Let's go with the 18s. And we left it off last time. I believe we left it off at the win over Queen's Park. So there's only been 2 games since. Of my what'd you call it? What'd you call it when you look stuff up? What'd you call it when you look stuff up? Your research. I know that's a bad word. That's a bad word on here, right? My research is correct. It was a 2-0 win over Hamilton, and then of course the 1-1 draw just recently with Celtic. Before we touch on the Celtic game, then just quickly a quick recap of the Hamilton game.
Yeah, look, I thought we played really well in the first half. Thought we moved the ball really well. We scored a really good goal. Callum Burnside put it away really well. We probably should have scored another couple of goals in that first half, to be honest. We should have probably been out of sight at half time. But typical Rangers, as I think we've spoken about a few times on the podcast, we don't seem to be able to put a solid 90 minutes together. So in the second half, it's hard to work out at times what happens from like one half to the next. But the second half, we just didn't really have a lot of possession. Hamilton probably should have scored. And then I think it was like the last 10, 15 minutes, Lyle Watt had an absolute beauty from like 25 yards and it just smashed the back of the net, basically. But it's weird. I still can't work out why we can't put 90 minutes together, why we can't find a level of consistency. And the thing is, like, sort of, we've always said, like, there's a good amount of talent in that group, but for some reason, we're just not able to put it together for 90 minutes. And it's baffling. You talk to some of the parents, they don't understand it. Even sometimes when you're lucky enough to spend like a couple of minutes talking to the players, they're saying, we work hard in training on things and we're doing the right things. But for some reason, they'll have like a spell of 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes where they just drop off. And as you've seen at the Dundee United game, sort of Rangers started off like a train. They went 1-0 ahead. They actually had a couple of other chances to maybe score a second or a third. Mm-hmm. And then for the next 70 minutes, it was like they took their foot off the gas. And before they know it, like Dundee United were in total control. They probably could have ran up a bigger score than what they actually did that day. And it's just, as I say, it's really hard to understand why we're like that. Because I've no doubt that on day we're as good as any team in the country, but we just don't seem to be able to put it together consistently.
But you would expect us at even at that age group, let's be honest, Rangers, Celtic, they always try and go for the best and the brightest young players. Well, so you would expect us to be up and around about the kind of top of the league. And it's a really difficult one for me to talk about consistency, especially at under 18s, because I mean, obviously I see a lot of Dundee United under 18s, but I don't really see a lot of other teams on a consistent basis. So is it a case that it is us that are one of the most inconsistent teams in the league? Or do you think it's just all teams at that age?
I think it's probably every team. Because see, when you look at the actual league table, the amount of games that every team has lost this year is unbelievable. I mean, Rangers have nearly lost as many games as they've won, but they're sitting in second position. Like, that shouldn't be possible. Like, you shouldn't be able to lose the amount of games Rangers have and still be in with a chance of winning the league, which they are incredibly. And it's... I know they're a young group, and that's the thing I always kind of go back to. I always think that maybe it's just a lot of young guys that maybe don't have that mentality yet to understand to win games. But unfortunately, see the minute you sign for Rangers, there's an expectation that you're going to win, and I'm not saying that should always be the case, right? Because obviously, depending on where you've came from, if you've came from other clubs, some of the guys have obviously come over from Northern Ireland, which is a totally different training from what they do over here. It takes some time to settle, etc. But see the fact that I saw so much of that group last season in the 16s and how talented they were and how well they were playing and like the level of quality they were showing, I just thought they would have carried it on this season. But maybe they've just had kind of blips against maybe some of the older 18 teams who have got a lot more guys that are 18 in the groups. And I think at times we've been punished because of that. But I do also think at times we've maybe just been a little bit slack. We've maybe just dropped off in some games. And you're going to get that. But I just don't think we should have lost the amount of games we have this season with the quality of players we have. But see, when we do lose games, we seem to lose games quite badly. Like the performance is poor, and then we'll concede like 3-4 goals. And that's maybe something that we need to tighten up if some of this group's going to be back next season at that level.
Well, I'll come back to you on the players that you think might either be there next season or maybe have a realistic chance of moving on. But I've got a fantastic question in, and it kind of ties in, and it's a kind of a two-way question. Well, right, it's Ian Barron. Do you think all the players are overcoached? Maybe that might be the problem. Now, I ask that, Wally, right, because you've actually said to me that you've watched a lot. Obviously, you've watched a lot of under-18s and a lot of Rangers B games, and there doesn't seem to be an awful lot of coaching coming from the sidelines during games.
No, look, I think it's clear at Rangers. I don't know if this is like an internal thing, but you don't really tend to hear the coaches shouting that often. You know, you don't really seem to hear much from the sidelines. I know we're over the opposite side of the pitch, but you can always hear the opposition coaches shouting. I mean, like the coach at Dundee United, you can always hear him shouting, like sort of throughout the game. And it's weird. I don't know if it's just an internal thing with Rangers, and it's almost left to the players to sort out the problems on the pitch. But yeah, look, it's probably the best of both worlds, right? When you look at it, we've had some really good technical players at Rangers who have maybe done things a little bit off the cuff, but it feels like those type of players got overcoached, and then they almost kind of lose that kind of freedom that they once had. Don't get me wrong, like they still get the ability, so like you never lose the ability, but you're almost maybe coached into not doing some of the things you used to. And I get the fact that it's part of the game now that you have to understand that you're in a shape. So if you're playing 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3, you need to drop into shape. Obviously, some of these kids have never really had to understand that. I watch somebody like Thompson Ashaka, and see at times, like you watch him and you think he's just playing how he would play back home in Africa. Like he just gets the ball, takes players on, runs by them, tries to do things that you probably shouldn't do. But then when we lose the ball, he probably doesn't drop into shape properly. But I enjoy watching players like that because you just don't know what they're going to do next. And it must be a nightmare for the opposition. But then on the other side of it, they then become somebody that the opposition can get at. You know what I mean? Because obviously if that guy's not dropping into shape, then there's going to be space down that side of the pitch. That's where you can build your attacks. He's not getting back to help the fullback. So I suppose it's the best of both worlds. And I think at clubs like Rangers and Celtic, you're going to have a lot of coaching. It's just how it is. You know, whether people like it or not, that is just how it is. You know, you're in there like 5-6 days a week. You know, you've obviously got the games that have been played. They're analysing games. They're watching the videos. You can go onto the site that they obviously have to watch the games back, to analyse it yourself, the breakdown of every touch during the game. So, yeah, look, it's just a big part of the game now, isn't it, really?
I suppose it is. And can I just say a big thank you to Kelly Pye, who has been a member for 15 months. Incredible support. Thank you very, very much. How much of a say then do Stephen Smith and Jonathan Johansson have then? At that age, do you think, Wally? Because I would imagine the same as most clubs, the same as probably all clubs, to be honest. Your under 18s and your B teams play the same formation, same style, same tactics as the first team, so that in order for them to be able to transition up through. In fact, do Rangers do that? And how much say do you think Stephen Smith and Johansson have? Are they managers or are they just coaches?
I think you would have to say that they're coaches. I think you would have to be honest and say that. I mean, yeah, again, when you watch so many games, like we've tried different things this season. We've tried to play like three at the back with two wing backs. We seem to have changed up a few times during the year as well. But yeah, again, that could just be that you're trying to kind of show the players that they need to play in different systems, because it can happen at first team level. I mean, there was talk for a while that Zeb wanted to maybe change things up every X amount of months, every 3 months, every 6 months, and maybe try a different system that would allow the players to understand what's required. Because at the end of the day, like, if somebody like Philip Clement could leave tomorrow and a new coach comes in and he has a totally different system, so if the players are trained on how to play in maybe 3-4 different systems, then you're ready to step up, aren't you? You know, like, you've got a general understanding as to how it works. I mean, the back three one was interesting because it seemed to work in some games, but it didn't work very well in others.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it would have actually helped us because the fullbacks that we have in like Xander Hutton and Cameron Scott are quite aggressive attacking fullbacks. So playing them more as a wing back than a fullback actually gave them more freedom. But it just didn't seem to work all the time. And I thought it would have worked better, so I understood why they tried it. But I suppose it's the reality of football, isn't it? When you sign a professional contract, it's just up to you as a player to understand what system you're in, where you need to be on the pitch at all times. But yeah, I get it. I think it's one of those things as a supporter, you would probably like there to be a system from the first team right the way down. But I do think you'll always see change within academy games because maybe something happens within a game and you need to change it internally.
I mean, we've got 264 people watching, which is a lot more than what we normally have for an academy review. So we've got nearly 200 watching on Twitter. So get your comments in, whether you're watching on Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook. If there's anything that you want to ask about the academy, I mean, for God's sake, don't ask me, right? But get your questions in, and I will certainly put them to William. Like and subscribe and share, regardless of what platform you're watching on as well. Every little helps. It really, really does. And right, William, Archie Stevens, I know he kind of flutters between the 18s and the B team. Right, and obviously we've got no inside information, but lots of rumours going about that he could be leaving at the end of the season. What do you think's going on there?
Yeah, look, if you believe the rumours that are flying about up at the academy, it does look like Archie could be leaving. I don't know what these guys were promised when they first signed. Obviously, these things are very private between, the club and the player. I don't know if by now maybe Archie felt like he would be closer to the first team than where he is. Maybe he doesn't feel like the best versus best games have been what he's looking for. And at the end of the day, like, Archie's still been away with England several times, which shows that he's still playing at a good enough level that he was still being selected. And I've got no doubt at the end of the day, like, if Rangers can pay these guys a decent wage, we're not talking about these guys being on a small sum of money up here, but clearly the English clubs can pay a lot more. And if his agent's doing his job, which obviously they should be at all times, I have no doubt that, privately there's been discussions had and there's an opportunity for the player to probably go back to England, play at maybe in his eyes a higher standard, and potentially he's going to earn a lot more money. So I can't be too critical of Archie. I think he's been a good player for us. I think he probably is slightly frustrated and maybe how it's worked out, maybe the last 12 months in particular. He's obviously had a few injuries as well, which has held him back. But he probably looks at somebody like Zach, who's at least been in and around the first team, that's been training with the first team. Obviously, injuries have curtailed that.
Well, yeah, we're going to touch on Zach. We're definitely going to touch on Zach.
But yeah, I got a feeling with Archie that he probably won't be here next year. Obviously, that will get confirmed in due course. But yeah, I do get a feeling that Archie might be a player that's not at Rangers next year.
And that's probably something that I think, anyway, if you look at the potential that he has, that's something that we'll probably look back on in the future, Willie, and regret. Because, I mean, listen, I think Rangers done really well. But you told me about Archie Stevens when he first came, and by the sounds of it, we were lucky to get him. A lot of high-profile clubs were looking at Archie, were interested in Archie, and we were lucky enough to get him. But like you say, it's just circumstances.
Yeah, look, see, at the end of the day, when you're trying to attract young players for England that are sought after, especially somebody like Zach Lovelace. I know Rangers pay Zach a reasonably good wage, in all honesty, but Zach could have probably went to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 English clubs if he chose. I think Craig Mulholland was very good at selling Rangers to players, as I think we've seen over the years. He was very good at being able to kind of entice players like Bailey Rice here as much as anything else. But when you look at somebody like Zach Lovelace, Archie Stevens, I mean, that was the same summer that we lost Rory Wilson, which was a huge blow to the academy, because Rory was an exceptional goal scorer. But then the fact we were able to go out and get Zach Lovelace and Archie Stevens, and both of those lads in that first year did really, really well. So I think most people were thinking, all right, we've lost Rory, which was a blow, but Archie and Zach look like they're real good players.
I think Rory would have been in that first team this season, if I'm being honest with you.
See the amount of goals that Rory scored, all the different types of goals, his movement in and around the box. The only thing that was probably lacking for Rory, and it's probably been hypercritical given he was like 15 at the time, was maybe like his hold-up play wasn't as good as it could be. But his ability in the box was scary. He just had this knack of always being in the right spot. He scored a couple of outrageous chips over the goalkeepers, and it didn't look like they had enough space to actually do it. So the way that he did that with the technique and things like that was just ridiculous. And everybody knew that there was clubs up watching Rory. Like, it wasn't really a shock when you were hearing some of the clubs that were interested, and obviously there was money getting spoken about. I mean, you started hearing some of the figures, whether those figures are true or not, that's not something we're privy to. But if it was true that some of the figures that were being spoken about with Rory, then there was no way that Rangers were going to be able to keep him. And at the end of the day, he's been down to Aston Villa and done pretty well. And it's fair play to the kid, because, he stepped up that level and he's still scoring goals. And that shows you the standard that, that Rory's at. And I'm sure he can probably kick on again.
Yeah. I mean, if we hadn't sold Rory, then we wouldn't have Zach Lovelace, and we know that for a fact.
I think it is fair to say, I don't know if we would have still signed Zach Lovelace and Archie Stevens had we signed Rory. I think it's unlikely. I mean, the club might have been able to do a deal for Zach, or maybe do a deal for Archie, but the fact we were able to get the two of them, I'm not so sure that would have been, money the academy would have had, because I think with Zach, I think it was like £350,000, £400,000, I think Rangers paid. And I think with Archie, it was over 100,000, I believe.
We sold Rory and we signed Archie and Zach and still had a profit.
Yeah, which is actually good going. I think Mulholland basically said that, didn't he? One of the times.
I didn't want to say that, Wally, but I.
Yeah, I think Craig kind of basically said that was the reasoning behind it. But the problem is, since then, we've probably not really kicked on again.
No.
With the English market, we've probably not really been able to bring in those players. But it's now becoming so difficult to compete with English teams, even the ones that are sitting down in the bottom 3, 4, 5 positions. I mean, you obviously know that your brothers had interest in them from clubs in England, and it's really difficult to say no to these clubs when you start to hear figures. And I know you're not always privy to that information as well, clearly, because that's maybe something your brother and his agent and stuff like that. But you've watched football for long enough. You know what some of these boys are earning in England now in some capacities, because they talk about it.
I'm not privy to it, but I'm retiring next season.
Well, there you go. And that's the thing. Like people don't understand. For some of these young kids, that could be life changing for them.
Mm-hmm.
They might not have grew up in the nicest home in terms of where they live, but they're happy. Remember, their parents have never been used to that kind of wealth, and all of a sudden, an English club saying to the parents, "Oh, there's a 5-figure fee," and also your son's going to be earning £150,000 a year, or £200,000, £300,000 a year.
There's a house for you as well.
And that's something Rangers quite simply just are not in a position to do for most of the academy. You might be able to do it for the odd one or two because they're exceptional, but in the main, Rangers can't have 6, 7, 8, 9 of those guys. Like, we just couldn't do that, because that would affect the first team budget.
Aye, and the problem is, if you can only afford to do it for 1 or 2, then the rest become jealous. Not the rest, but you know what I mean. People start then becoming, envious and jealous.
If you're starting to play 5 players, $5,000 a week, but they're maybe one of the best 5 players in the team all of a sudden, and there's 2 guys that are playing really well, they're on £1,000 a week. This is just like in a brief outline.
Aye.
Guys say, well, I want my next contract with that. And Rangers like, well, we actually can't afford to have any more players on that level of wage. Then the boys like, well, that's fine, I'll just go to somebody else. I'll go to Bournemouth. I'll go to Brighton. Do you know what I mean? So Rangers are always in that tough position where if they don't renew quite quickly with a lot of these kids, when their contracts start to run down in the final year, the last 6 months, then like the player and the agent are in total control of the situation.
And I think, and I'm not saying anything now, but I think what people will find over the next couple of years is that youth football in Scotland's about to drastically change. And believe me, not for the better. Just finishing up on the 18s then, Willie. A 1 each draw against Celtic, and again, it's one of these good half, bad halves.
Yeah, first half I thought we were a bit up and down, and yet again, as I say, it's so frustrating when you watch them. But you see at times in the second half, we played some absolutely incredible football, and we should have scored 2 or 3 goals. I mean, Finlay Curtis had 2 great chances and didn't score, and that shocked me more than anything else, because normally when Finlay's bearing down in goal, the one thing you can expect is the ball to hit the back of the net, because that's where Finlay's really good. For all he's a midfield player, and I mean, when Finlay gets through in goal, he's got this unbelievable ability to score goals. I think he's like the second top goal scorer.
He's one of the best goal scorers at the club.
Yeah. So when he missed those 2 chances, you're just walking out the ground thinking, I can't believe Finlay missed those, because he just so often just slots it by the goalie.
Sack him.
Aye, well. Well, yeah, again, I think Finlay's one of those kids that's out of contract this summer. And I
think it would be crazy, Willie, not to tie him down to a new deal.
Yeah, I think the only thing for Finlay would be that he's got to consider, does he want to play in the best versus best games next year? Because that certainly sounds what it is again. So players have to think about their future. It's not just, I mean, like, Finlay's never hidden the fact that he supports Rangers, that he goes to Rangers games and stuff like that. But at some point in your professional career, that becomes a second thought, because you've got to think about what's going to help you develop into a first team player somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And for Finlay, it might be that I move somewhere else is what he needs. I hope he stays, and I hope he keeps kicking on, because he's probably been one of the best players at 18s level in the last 2 seasons. But at the end of the day, when it comes to any player that's out of contract this year or next year, you do have to start looking at it and saying, well, what's best for me? You know? And I know we're going to touch on some players that are out on loan in the next couple of minutes as well. And those kind of guys are in that same position as well, because they need to decide what's best for them. You know, whether it's playing first team football and earning a bit less money, or it's staying at Rangers and earning another, couple of years worth of good wages, but you're not really any closer to the first team.
Well, one of those players out on loan is one of my favourites, Aaron Lyle. And he seems to be doing very, very well, Willie. What's his contract situation with Rangers? Is it up at the end of the season?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, again, a lot of these things are very private. So, I mean, I just kind of try and guess it. I've got it on my WordPress where I think contracts are roughly running out, but I don't know that for certain, because I don't go up asking the players when their contract's out. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not asking the parents when their boy's contract runs out. It's not something I would ever ask. So I roughly look at most players that are 16 will either sign a 2-year deal or a 3-year deal most of the time at that age group. And so roughly for most of the players, they'll either about a contract and like sort of next year or the year after if they've just signed their contract, because they'll be on at least 2 years. For some of the other boys like Aaron, who's obviously on his second or his third contract at Rangers, I'm pretty sure it was only a 1-year extension that Aaron signed last year. Mm-hmm. So I think that would suggest that his contract's up in the summer, unless Rangers have an option to extend it. But that was never put into like the tweet that came out kind of thing when you checked it. So I take it it's just a 1-year deal. So if you're Aaron and you're now actually playing for Airdrie and you're getting a wee bit of consistency of playing in the Championship, which, I mean, I've got to be honest with you, like, it can't be easy just going from playing like the B team best versus best games to all of a sudden playing for Airdrie. Mm-hmm. I don't think that can be easy. And I think it has taken him a little bit of time to settle. But then he's a kid that's got huge amounts of ability. And I think we've seen that. And the fact that he's got his first goal there at the weekend, I think he was obviously a big part in also creating at least one of the other goals as well. And that's no surprise, because Aaron's got that ability.
And it's also, for me anyway, the perfect team for him to go to be honest with you, William, because Rhys McCabe, obviously, at Airdrie, has got a specific style of play that he wants to play, and he won't change from it. And whether it gets some results or whether they lose, he doesn't move from his tactical mentality. And I think that is the way that Rhys plays the game, for the attributes that Aaron's got. I think it's the absolute perfect fit. And again, I'll repeat myself, and maybe I've just got Aaron Lyle blindness. Maybe I do, right? But I think it would be crazy for Rangers not to try and get this boy tied down, because I think he could really play a serious part in our team going forward.
Yeah, look, that's the thing about football. It is very much all about opinions, and that's what it's all about. I just think Aaron will look at it this summer, and it might be there's an opportunity for him to sign for Airdrie for a year or two, and for him the opportunity to then play 50 games for Airdrie. All right, like, the only problem might be that Rhys McCabe gets offered a better job because he's done such a good job at Airdrie. You would imagine come the summer there's going to be clubs looking at him.
Dundee United.
Aye, look, see anybody that's that strong-willed to continue to do what he's done at Airdrie, especially when you've just get promoted. A lot of managers, when they just get promoted for League One, would have maybe thought, right, we can't maybe play this open, expansive football again in the Championship because we might get torn apart here. He's just like, no, we're going to continue on. And some of the football they've played, I mean, I've caught a couple of their games on television when they've been live and stuff, and it's a real joy to watch them play. And obviously, we played them in the Cup that night at Capello, and some of the football was brilliant. And there's a lot of young players in that group as well, a lot of teenagers. So it's not like they're experienced in the overall scheme of things, but they just go out and they play with a flair and they play with. I just love watching them play. I think it's a real joy to watch. And I would love to see more teams play like that because I do think it would entice clubs to send out more players and loan to teams like that. And for somebody like Aaron, it was a perfect fit, as you said, because Aaron goes in there and he plays a similar type of football because he wants to get in the ball, he wants to be aggressive, he wants to get forward, he wants to create, he wants to score. And that suits very much the method that Airdrie play, which is get in the front foot and get at teams. I mean, that was, 5 goals he scored at the weekend?
Mm-hmm.
And I think by all accounts, some guys had said they could have scored a few more. So, I mean, that tells you a lot about how Airdrie play and how they set up.
We've also got James Graham, somebody who me and you spoke a lot about last season, actually. He's obviously in Galabank at Annan. 10 appearances, 1 assist for James.
Yeah, he's moved on to Dumbarton now, obviously. Second half of this season, he's went to Dumbarton.
He went to Dumbarton.
But look, I think for somebody like James, it's highly likely he's probably going to go in the summer. And I think it's just because, like, it doesn't feel like he's going to make it at Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, he's got to then find a level that he is going to be able to play at on a regular basis. So for James, going to Annan and playing is fine. I know he kind of spent quite a bit of time on the bench. I think he has done a wee bit of that at Dumbarton as well. So it might be that he needs to go to another level and play just so that he's a regular appearance maker. And that's the thing for all the players. Not everybody's going to be at Rangers because we know that. It's like the 0.01% are good enough to make it at Rangers. So for all the players, they need to find out, are they going to play in the Lowland League? Are they going to play in League Two? Are they going to play in League One? Are they going to be good enough to play in the Championship? Some guys have been good enough to play in the Prem, like Lewis Mayo. Do you know? So it just shows you everybody has a level. It's just finding out where that level is.
Yeah, and we've got quite a few goalkeepers out on loan. James Hogarth, obviously Budanowskis and Jacob Pasikas. If we start with, who will we start with? We'll start with Jay Hogarth, obviously at Dumbarton, along with James Graham. Is he getting many minutes at Dumbarton, Wally?
Yeah, it looks like Jay's playing most games, which is not unexpected because Jay was a good goalkeeper when he was out on loan previously. And I think if it hadn't been for some of the issues he had earlier on in the season, he would have probably been playing at a higher level. But see, Jay, like, to me, he is one of the most talented young goalkeepers we've got in the club. I really like Jay. I think he's a really good shot stopper. I think he's good with the ball at his feet. I think he is the standout one. For Jacob, obviously, Jacob's been at civil service strollers yet again. I think he had a bad injury in his wrist or his hand, so he missed a couple of months. So that's kind of pushed him back a little bit. Lewis Budanowskis has been playing pretty regularly for Stranraer, but yet again, I think his contract's up in the summer. So it might be that because he's played so well for Stranraer this year, there might be some teams out there that are looking to take him permanently come the summer. Because realistically, at some point for a goalkeeper, you've got to move on. You look at what we've got in the first team. We've obviously got, our first choice goalkeeper in Jack Butland. Get John McLaughlin, whose contract's out in the summer, but he'll be earning a good chunk of money. You've got Robbie McCrory, that's probably the second, third choice, yet again on a decent wage. And you've got Kieran Wright, that's the fourth choice. Then below him, you've got guys like Jay Hogarth. You've got Lewis Budanowskis. You've got Mason Munn. You've got Alfie Halliwell. You've got Greg Thackeray. They've also got Ryden Maguire. So it's a lot of goalkeepers, but I think this summer we will see some move on. I think there's a high chance that John McLaughlin goes.
Do you think Robbie McCrory? I know we're kind of moving. I've just jumped to the first team, but Robbie McCrory's still had a couple of games for the B team, so he can get classed in this chat. Do you think Robbie McCrory goes at the end of the season?
I think if he wants to be a first choice goalkeeper, yes. I think if he wants to be a first choice goalkeeper, 100%. I think Paul was asking who was the goalkeeper that was out on loan at Alloa. Yeah, that was Jay Hogarth. That was where he was previously. But yeah, like, get back to Robbie, 100% he needs to go and play.
Mm-hmm.
I think, what was that? He was 25 today or 26.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point you need to step out. Yeah, like, so at some point you need to step out of somebody's shadow and start playing. You know, it's unrealistic to think he's going to start ahead of Jack Butland at this present moment in time. Because Jack looks as though he's levels above everybody else in terms of the goalkeeping standard. So it's hard to see anybody getting in ahead of him unless there's an injury. So, like, for Robbie, he's probably going to
nobody's touching Jack. Jack's an English an England national team quality goalkeeper, and then he could go down south and go to one of the. He could go to any team in England, if I'm being brutally honest, and that's not just my blue tinted specs. So for us to have any goal, especially a young goalkeeper, to come through and take a place off of Jack, it's almost impossible, if not.
Of course it is.
Impossible.
Of course it is. Look, see, at the end of the day, when you've got somebody of that standard, there was Alan McGregor for years as well. He sat behind guys like Stefan Klos.
Mm-hmm.
But he was fortunate that at a time, I think we had Lionel Letizia in goals, the French goalkeeper, and Alan started to play a little bit more, and then he broke into the first team, and he went to a level that Letizia just wasn't at. And Alan kicked on and kicked on and kicked on. It's hard to see Robbie getting that opportunity at the current time because of how well Jack's playing. So, yeah, I agree with what Ian's saying there. I think McCrory and McLaughlin will go this summer. John, because he's out of contract first and foremost, and I think Robbie because he needs to go and play.
And you've also got, obviously, Lewis Badanauskas at Stranraer. 23 or 24 appearances, so he's played a lot of games for Stranraer. And obviously, look, me and you watched him a lot last season. He was obviously the first choice B-team goalkeeper out on loan this season. Is it going to be a case for Lewis that, if he wants to get more first-team football, he's got to find himself a new club?
Yeah, I think that's realistic. I think when you look at somebody like Lewis, he's now at an age where he needs to go and sign somewhere and be a regular. Clearly, he's probably going to have to take a pay cut to do that, you know. But for him, it should just all be about playing.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's an opportunity there, maybe even at a level above Stranraer, because of how well he's done there, it might be that actually helps him push on a little bit more. Or if the worst comes to the worst, I'm sure the fact he's done so well at Stranraer, they would offer him the chance to stay permanently. And that's the tough thing for all the academy players, as I said earlier. It's just finding that level where you feel you can play at, and then hopefully you can improve and develop, and then maybe move a little bit further up. Because that's the same for every player. For Lewis, the fact he's played regularly this season has been good for him.
Aye. No, it really has. Now, the last loan player we're going to speak about, Wally, is somebody who's out on loan at Motherwell, who's technically first team. Technically, I say, because he doesn't really play that many games, hence why he's been loaned out, but he's still part of the B team. And it's somebody who and it's not just because he's Sidney Devine's grandson, right? It's somebody who I've got a lot of time for, and I think it's a cracking fullback, Wally, and Adam Devine. Can play left and right. I think he's great at getting up and down the park. I think he's very solid defensively. He's learning all the time. And I genuinely think next season, if not first choice, depending on what happens with Dujon Sterling moving forward into midfield or whatever, he's back up for Yilmaz. He's back up for Tavernier. He can do a job. He can play in Europe. He can play in Scotland. I think he's a cracking player.
Yeah, I suppose Adams could get the same thought process as maybe several other young players that they've got to decide what they want to do, though. You know, is he happy to be a backup all season and he might play 5 or 10 games over the season? Or
I think he plays more than that. I think if you look at Ridvan, now there's rumours today. I don't know how true it is that there's been a deal agreed for Borna. I can't even remember what club it was, right? But there's rumours that there's been a deal agreed for him at the end of the season for him to go. Don't know how true that is, but I would expect Borna to go at the end of the season. And you look at the way that Yilmaz has to be used, has to be rotated because he's got these slight injury problems. I think between the two, between Yilmaz and Tav next season, I think Adam Devine, if he stays in this team, I think he gets upwards of 25 appearances at least next season.
Yeah, look, and Adam's got to consider that. I mean, that's the big thing. He's got to look at where he thinks his career's going. He's obviously been out on loan at Motherwell, where he's done reasonably well. He's obviously shown that he can play at this level, which is really good for him. But I suppose, yet again, he's got to consider, does he want to stay at Rangers? Does he want to give it another opportunity? Or does he think that he needs to leave and actually go somewhere permanently where he is going to play? I think from Adam's point of view, it's really tough to start ahead of Tav. Look, I mean, that's, we've had Nathan Patterson try to do that. And Nathan did actually play a reasonable amount of games before he was sold for a hell of a lot of money. For Adam, he's got to probably look at it a bit like what you're saying. He's probably got to think, well, I might have to play at left back sometimes, which isn't the most natural for him, but he's obviously done it previously. But I just wonder what his mindset is, a bit like Leon King and a bit like Cole McKinnon and stuff like that. See, once you've had that taste and then maybe you're away for the first team and you're not maybe playing as much, you're not getting the minutes you once did. It's like, how do you sort of work out in your mind what's best to do? Because he's now had a pretty regular taste of first team action with Motherwell, whether he's been coming off the bench or he's been starting games, so he's been getting enough minutes at Motherwell. He's obviously impressed in some of the games as well.
Can I just jump in there, Walter? Actually, just on that very point, there's a noticeable difference when he plays, and I'm not just saying this, and again, this isn't blue tinted specs. So much better than Stephen O'Donnell. He offers so much more to that Motherwell team than what Stephen O'Donnell does, and I think you've seen it in the game. Might even have been against Celtic when Devine was playing. He played really well. He done a great job. I think it was Celtic. And then he comes off and they bring on Stephen O'Donnell and it's night and day.
Yeah, look, again, it kind of falls back to that situation where you've got a guy that's 10 years younger than the other player. So you're probably going to have more athleticism, more pace, more kind of exuberance to get forward as much as anything else. And Adam is an aggressive fullback. He wants to get on the front foot. And I think that's worked out well for him at Motherwell, which has been great for him. But then there's the other side of the coin where you'll have supporters saying, but he's never going to be a regular for Rangers. He's never going to be good enough to play for Rangers regularly. And that's where that's where players need to work out what's best for them. And that's the difficult side of football. If somebody like
does he have to be good enough to start every game though? That I read something on Twitter and it was a great point, and I can't remember who it was by, Wally, right? But the point was that we should be looking, every club, not just Rangers, should be looking at academy players to come in and be squad players. And then that's when you go out and you spend your money on your foreign players who are a level above, if you like. But your academy should be used to bring through squad players who are good enough to play in the team, but maybe aren't, at the top rankings, ratings of that team. But that's the whole point of having an academy. That's why you have squad players. That's why you have Adam Devines and Cole McKinnons and Ross McCausland.
Yeah, but I suppose these guys also have to have the mindset. Are they happy to just be squad players? And I think that's the problem, maybe. And I think once you've had that taste of first team football when you've been out on loan, it can't be easy to come back and then just sit there and accept that. Do you know what I mean? That must be really difficult. Obviously your wee brother's had the taste of first team football, and I'm sure he absolutely loved every minute of it. But then all of a sudden you're back playing for the under-18s. And it must be...
see that getting that taste of first team football, it reinvigorates you as a young player, by the way. It does something to you as a young player where you go, no, I want that. So I get your point. If you're then put back into the 18s or you're put back into the B team and you don't get another sniff of first team football, I suppose it can completely demoralise you.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's hard. It must be so difficult. Some people say, but these boys are earning good money, but so many of them just want to play. They just want to play regularly. They want to be playing first team football. And it can't be easy when maybe you're going 4, 6, 7, 8, 10 games and you're barely seeing a minute of action. You're on the bench all the time, or maybe you're the 19th man or whatever. That must be so tough. You're in there in the day at Ibrox and then you miss out in the squad, and then it's, you get to the next game, you work hard in training for the next 3, 4, 5 days, then it's the same again. You miss out in the squad. The next game you're in the squad, but you don't go off the bench. That must be so, so difficult. And you've got to be mentally tough to do that. So for somebody like Adam that's been out on loan now and always been playing at Motherwell, is he going to want to come back and be that bit part player again? That's something that Adam needs to ask himself as well.
Has he shown, though, at Motherwell that he has the capability to play in this league? So, for example, if he turns into Rangers at the end of the season, and let's not kid ourselves, Adam Devine, massive Rangers supporter, loves the club, but that doesn't always matter in terms of if he turns into Rangers at the end of the season and goes, look, Rangers, I want to be playing X amount of games in the season. Can you guarantee me that? No, well, I want to move. Is a move to a top team in the SPFL viable for Adam?
Well, yeah, again, I mean, I don't know if Adam is like a Rangers fan, to be honest with you. It's not
No,
really
yes.
something but from my perspective, I think it would be difficult for a lot of clubs in Scotland to afford Adam. I would imagine Rangers would be looking for a decent fee. But I think for Adam's sake, he would want to play. You know, it'd be interesting if somebody like Motherwell, I mean, I'm not saying this is going to happen, right? So don't kind of jump off the charts and it causes a riot. But, you know, if Rangers had an interest in the boy Lennon Miller, right? Like, could Rangers use that to get Adam to Motherwell on a permanent deal? Rangers get Lennon Miller. Yeah, again, I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I'm just putting a for instance out there. That would probably be the only way it would work because Motherwell wouldn't have to pay a fee for Adam. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's the only way that you could do that type of deal. Or if somebody like Kilmarnock were interested, could we get the boy Watson? Which, yeah, I'm saying I'm not going to happen, clearly. But that's the only way that those type of deals are ever going to happen, I believe. Especially for somebody like a Leon King or Adam Devine who have got value. Do you know?
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I think as much as I'm saying, Molly, that I would love Adam Devine to stay and fight for his place and play next season, if the opportunity was there to get more Watson for me than Miller. If the opportunity was there for us to say to Kilmarnock, there's Adam Devine and we'll give you X amount of $2 million or whatever for David Watson, because I think he'll probably demand a high value because he's a cracking young player. Then that's absolutely something that I think that we should look at. Just quickly finishing up on the B team games, and then I'll ask you the final question about we're going to pick somebody who's going to be able to make it into this Rangers first team. I can't remember where we left it off last time, Willie. I know that Rangers had played Carlisle, and then the Rangers B played Dundee. Did we speak about the Dundee game, or did we speak about that, and then it was obviously the Royal Antwerp game?
Yeah, I think it was basically just, I think we kind of chatted quickly about the Dundee game. Obviously, nobody had access to the game over in Antwerp. But obviously, they were 2-0 up and we lost 3 goals in about 10 minutes, I think it was.
Again, as you say, the 2 goal scorers, Josh Gentles, Finlay Curtis. Josh, who we've spoke about a lot. I was fortunate enough at actually one of the under-18s game to speak to Josh's mum. Josh has been playing out his skin this season for Rangers, and again, Finlay Curtis just keeps on scoring goals regardless of the level.
Yeah, look, both boys that are obviously available for the 18s scoring goals for the B team. It's great for both of them. And yet again, another good experience. You know, like you're travelling away to Belgium, you're playing against a good quality standard of opposition. Obviously, they'll be disappointed in throwing away a 2-goal lead. That will be disappointing. But I'm sure the boys took a lot from it. And then, like, the Brentford B game was brilliant. I mean, when you seen Brentford rocking up with some of the players they had, like, I think their centre half cost about 2 or 3 million. I think their goalkeeper was a couple of million. I think even some of the other players in the pitch cost at least $1 million as well. So that's the proper tests that you want.
How did we look against that Brentford team then, William?
Look, we actually played pretty well. We actually created some chances that we shouldn't. That we wouldn't have created in other games, because I felt like the players had pushed up an intensity level. Like, I felt like the players knew that was going to be an extremely tough game, and they showed that. I mean, the goals we lost were really, really poor. It was a miscontrol by the goalkeeper that ended up in a goal, and the second one was a penalty. But in terms of the overall performance, I thought it was actually really, really good. I thought we moved the ball pretty well. I thought we were a constant threat. And I'd say, possibly on another day, you might have had a different result. But also, the goal we lost for the goalkeeping mistake was really, really poor. He tried to do a wee kind of drag back turn, lost it, and the guy tackled the ball into the back of the net. But look, at the end of the day, like, I think those games are good games. Brentford B are a seriously good team. See, if that Brentford B team was to play in the top flight of Scotland, that team would be up there. I mean, it was crazy. Like, the quality they have, even at B team level, is actually scary. They were playing guys that had actually played in the English Premier League as well. And I'd say they'd signed like the South Korean guy, the centre half, and I think he was like 2 or 3 million. And then the goalkeeper is like a full Icelandic international, and I think he was like 2 or 3 million. So that's the levels that we are being tested against, and I think that kind of test is a true test of the quality we have, rather than maybe some of the other games where it's maybe not been at the level that you would like it to be.
So when the pressure's on, this young Rangers team performs, basically, when they're playing again. And albeit we lost, but like you say, that's a Brentford coming to Auchenhowie or Rangers going down south. it's a game that's going to be like you says when you rhyme off the amounts the players cost and the experience the players have. It's almost unwinnable.
Yeah, but that's why you should enjoy their games, though, because people don't expect you to win. That's what's good about them. Even the Leeds game, when we played down at Leeds, they had some guys that had played in the Premier League. I think one of the players actually cost like 4 or 5 million, one of the guys that started against us. And that's something that... And yet again, we played really well that day. I mean, you could argue that some of our best performances this season have come against English academies. It's almost as though like, we're like, right, we need to show we're better. And we're out and we're into it and we're tackling hard, we're winning the ball, we're winning the breakdown. You know, we're doing that little bit more than maybe some of the other games. And that's no disrespect to some of the other opposition. It's really not. It's just, I think sometimes when you come up against better teams, a bit like Rangers in Europe in some ways, to be honest. You know, like, you need to up the intensity, you need to up your level. And that's where these kind of games are very, very good. And actually, I thought Brentford were good. I thought they moved the ball well. I thought their quality was good. And you could see why their system maybe works better than ours. You know, they've got the financial power to travel all around the world and play in all these tournaments. They can play against the top level of opposition. They can go out and sign some of the best under 18s, 19s, 20s, 21s, because the club can fund it. You know, if Rangers could have a £2 million centre-back playing in the B team that's on the cusp of the first team, that's like the perfect scenario, as long as they're being tested week in, week out, while they're not playing for the first team. And from what you can read and what you hear about Brentford, they don't have any fear about like sort of moving these boys up to the first team and putting them in there, because they have a system that works, you know, with analytics-based stuff. And I think there's a general belief that if they're doing well for Brentford B, then they can step up and possibly come off the bench or even start games for Brentford's first team, which is absolutely fantastic.
That is the absolute perfect segue into what I'm about to ask you. You've just mentioned there about Brentford don't have any fear of putting these young boys in, albeit on I suppose it's not on a slightly different level, because if you've got a player going to Brentford for 1.2 million, then going into playing the Premier League is like going for the Rangers B team into playing for Rangers in the SPFL, monetary wise, because 1.2 million in the Premier League is absolutely nothing. So if we're looking at the B team, obviously not so much the under 18s, but if we're looking at this Rangers B team, Willie, is there anybody standing out? Is there anybody who you can hand on heart look at and go, next season, yep, he's got the chance to break through. He's got a chance to do what Ross has done. I mean, Cole McKinnon obviously springs to mind because he's had, that first few minutes. But is there anybody that stands out for you where you go, no, he's not quite, but almost a dead set?
Look, I think we spoke about it 100 times before. Like Bailey Rice is the obvious one. You know, Bailey always shows.
Do you think next season for Bailey? Do you think next season for Bailey?
I think it is, mate. And at the end of the day, like every season that passes for Bailey, and if he's not in and around the first team, you know, does that make the kid think, well, I might need to leave Rangers to go and play somewhere else? Because at the end of the day, like Bailey would still be highly sought after if he was to leave Rangers. I don't think that would even be up for debate. And I would imagine Bailey's frustration is he's looking at guys like Watson and Muller who are playing at Motherwell and Kelly. And like Bailey probably should be at the same level, if not higher, because I think Bailey's an exceptional talent. But he obviously chose to come to Rangers, and he's had some sniffs of the first team, you know. But when you watch guys like Lennon Muller, who's basically played every other week, you look at David Watson, who's basically playing every other week, that's the difference. And that's why teams will continue to go, all right, I might pay a couple of million for Watson or a couple of million for Muller, depending on what these clubs are looking for. It could be more. But I mean, Bailey must be sitting there thinking, well, I'm still kicking about the B team, which is probably a bit of frustration. I know he's only 17, but that doesn't change the fact he's a high.
If he was at Motherwell now, he'd be playing beside Lennon Muller in the middle of that park.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think if Bailey had been at Motherwell, he would probably have played 30, 40, 50 games by now. And that's the difference. And yet again, this is the problem that Rangers have. They have to be seen to be showing these guys have got a future. Because see when you start looking at players for this summer or next summer for the academy, how do you sell the dream to them if somebody like Bailey Rice can't get in the first team? Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? How much better a player can you get in Scotland than what Bailey?
No, we're talking Wally about getting Lennon Muller. No, Lennon Muller was coming through the academy at the same kind of rough time as Bailey. Nobody was shouting about Lennon Muller back when he was 14, 15. Everybody was shouting about Bailey Rice. So
Aye, and
surely to God, rather than paying 2, 3, 4, 5 million for Lennon Miller and bringing him to Rangers, you just play Bailey Rice.
I know. And I think that's the annoyance from my perspective. Like, I see the moment we signed Bailey and he played in the first couple of 18s games. Obviously, like, you've met some of the guys that come to the academy games as well. And like, you're just looking at each other going, he's just a level above everybody else on the pitch. And then, like, the more you watch him, like, you pick up on his range of passing, his ability to read the game. It's something that a 16-year-old shouldn't have, really. You know, his ability to just find these wee pockets and move the ball, it's exceptional. And like, the one thing I've always like sort of said to his dad, I said, I would love to see Bailey hit the shots more. You know, because like, Bailey's got a really good ability to strike a ball when you look at his passing range. So why can't he do that in front of goal as well? And yeah, it's so frustrating. Because I'm not saying that Lennon Miller's not a good player. He clearly is. Because he wouldn't be playing week in, week out for Millwall if he wasn't. But my opinion is that Bailey's of a higher level. But people that are watching this or whatever, or listening to it will go, well, you can't really say that because Bailey's not on the Rangers first team. And I totally accept that. But I'm just talking about when we signed Bailey, I don't think there was a better young Scottish player in the country than when we signed Bailey. So,
honestly, it's really difficult to explain, Molly, because I've said since basically we started up the Rabble, I've said this, right? I am no tactical genius. I don't watch football and go, well, the reason they scored that was because he was there when he should have been there, and he should have had a hula hoop and he should have jumped through it and he would have, right? I'm not that kind of guy. You don't have to be that kind of guy. When you first went to watch the B team games and you seen Bailey Rice on that pitch, it was genuinely the best way I can describe it for anybody who obviously likes the academy stuff. Last season or the season before, Willie, we went to Ibrox to watch Rangers Celtic, the under 18s, I think it was, and Alex Lowry was playing.
I think that was a B team game.
Might have been a B team game. Might have been a B team game, right? And it was like an adult playing with kids watching Alex. My throat just went watching Alex Lowry. I'll let you carry on.
Yeah, look, there's some players that just have a level in them. Like Alex, even at some of the younger age groups, could do things that other players couldn't do, and he's got that great ability to find those passes that others don't see. It's almost as though he was a step ahead at times. Him and Robbie Fraser had a great relationship. You know, those two could play together really well, and they always seem to know where each other would be all the time. And when you watch Bailey, I see even when he came in at the first stages of his Rangers career, when he was playing for the 18s before he kind of moved up, some of the things that Bailey was doing, you were just sitting thinking that's a level above what we've got at the club at the moment. And it wasn't too much of a surprise that he was obviously on the bench for the first team and then he obviously come on for his debut and stuff like that. But yeah, there's some players that just have that, like that level that other players don't. And that's not been disrespectful to other players. But it's just like everything in life. Like you'll find people that are better at tennis, that are better at swimming. Do you know what I mean? That's just how it is. And in football terms, Bailey is just that level above so many other players. But at the end of the day, I'm sure privately he would be wanting to play in the first team and he would want to be in and around the first team and he would like to make more squads and do more minutes. I mean, like one of the questions that's been asked here with Paul is he going to go out on loan?
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up to you there, right? Well,
I don't see why not. And if Bailey feels as though that's what's good for him and the club think it as well, 100%. I think there's one of their comments. You think Bailey Rice is better than Cifuentes and Raskin? I mean, it's hard to say that, isn't it? I mean, it's hard to say that when these guys are played first.
I think it's unequivocal, Wally. It's unequivocal to me that we can sit here and say, and can I just apologise to everybody? I've been ill for months and my throat this won't go away. Bailey Rice would have offered more than what Cifuentes offered Rangers, and I can comfortably sit here and say that. And that's, I'm not having a dig at Cifuentes.
Yeah,
it just clearly didn't work for him at the time that he was at Rangers. But Bailey Rice would have offered far more. Raskin's a more difficult one because Raskin came in last season, done really, really well. A lot of people seem to have forgot that. But he would have certainly have done a far better job than Cifuentes. And the point that's the point I was making. When you watch him in the younger age groups, Wally, it's like men versus kids with Bailey. There is no benefit to him playing for the B team, to him playing for the under 18s. He's just too good.
Yeah, and that's one of the arguments that we've had, obviously, in some of these recent cup games, which obviously you were at, the Dundee United semi-final. Now, there was a lot of thought that Bailey might play in that game because Rangers obviously wanted to win it. Obviously, in the end, he didn't. But now that we're through to the final to play Aberdeen, will Rangers drop Bailey Rice back into the 18s to play in that cup final? Because Aberdeen are likely going to play a lot of the loan players that are out at the moment.
Well, Aberdeen will be favourites for that, won't they?
Yeah, 100%. Aberdeen are the favourites. They've got a lot of young guys that are out playing men's football right now. And look, don't get me wrong, that Rangers can look at and go, we can call in Mason Munn, we can call in Paul and Seal, we could call in Bailey Rice. Obviously, you would normally have called in Zach Lovelace, but that's not going to happen. We can call in Archie Stevens, we can call in Josh Gentles, etc., etc. But, I mean, like, yeah, because let's watch it. I'll ask you this, right? Do you think it'd be right for Rangers to play Bailey Rice in the 18s final?
No, I don't.
I don't they are. But I do think it could happen. And that's what I'm saying. I don't think it would be right to do it. But if Rangers want to win that final, then if you start Bailey Rice, do you think that gives Rangers a better chance of winning it against a
If you start Bailey Rice, it makes us favourites. I don't care what anybody says it does. But remember, we had the conversation. We had the conversation with Craig Mulholland. And Craig Mulholland, and we can say this now because he's buggered off to Nottingham Forest. It wasn't always about winning at that age group, at the 18s, at the B team level. It was about the progress of the players and how the players made their way, hopefully, towards being good enough to start for the first team. So I think it would be extremely unfair at Rangers to bring in your Bailey Rice, to bring in your Thompson and Shakas, to bring in your Josh Gentles into that 18s team just so they can win it. Because what does that say to the players that have got them there?
Thing is, Rangers done it last season as well, though. Like, sort of, they called in Zach Lovelace to play in some of the games, which people, whether you think it's right or wrong, like, at the end of the day, like, Zach was eligible to play, but you could have argued that it probably wasn't right to do that. And that's the same argument you've got this year with Bailey. And it's interesting, you can see it from both sides. I think Locke's asked my question, is Clement and his team the men to unlock the...
I'm going to get to that in 2 seconds. We'll just wrap up this piece.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me when it comes to Bailey, if Bailey isn't going to be in and around the first team at the summer, moving into next season, then I think there has to be chats about what's best for Bailey moving forward after that, whether that is a loan move or whether there's some type of programme put in place for Bailey to make sure that he is going to be part of the first team. So
basically, if I put a gun to your head and said, name me one player who you think could or would or will or maybe make the jump next season, it would be Bailey Rice.
Yeah, Bailey Rice. Yeah, and I will say quickly, I think Mason Munn's had a great season. The Northern Irish goalkeeper for the B team.
There's no way.
I think Mason's been very good. He's another one I think the club will need to sit down and try and get him on a new contract. I think he's got a year left. But yeah, again, I'm sure Mason's probably attracting interest from English clubs. So that's one of those things. Yet again, the club need to get this sorted soon. You see, the longer this runs on, the higher the chance there is that he goes somewhere else.
Well, not only is he a good goalkeeper, but he's a good leader and he's a good organiser as well. And he's never shuts up. Mason, he never shuts up on the pitch. See, he played obviously in the under-18 semi-final, and he was just constantly talking his defender through the game.
Yeah, look, he's a great shot stopper. He's a top shot stopper. I didn't realise how big Mason was until he walked by me at one of the games.
Do you know how inadequate it makes me feel, Willie?
He's a monster. Games. I know, he's a monster, Mason, when he walks by you. But, Rangers did well at the time to get Mason, because I think there was obviously quite a bit of interest in Mason.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the big thing you've got to make sure with these kids is you don't want them to stall at any point of their career. Like, they need to make sure that they keep pushing on. So I think for Mason, the right thing, in my opinion, would be Rangers to sit down with Mason, get him on a new contract, obviously give him a pay rise and show him a pathway towards the first team. Because that's got to be the way forward for somebody like Mason Munn. If he doesn't see that, then obviously quite rightly he's going to look at what's best for him, and it might involve a move to England, which I think would probably happen if Rangers were to decide that they weren't going to keep him type thing, or that Mason chose to leave.
My missus, I didn't realise it came home with my daughter. My missus has buggered off to the shop. My daughter, who's 9, has made herself a rustler burger, and she's just came in there and showed me it. Now, I don't know how cooked that is, but I'm right in the middle of this. So if she gets food poisoning, she gets food poisoning, because I don't know how well cooked that rustler burger is.
I think you only need to cook it for a minute, so it
I
can't be too
I don't know if she knows what a minute is. I'll be honest with you. But it looked all right. It looked all right. All right. So thanks very much to Lockeye Review for the super chat and the support. It's greatly appreciated. Evening, lads. Nice to see you on the pod, Willie. Don't make him feel wanted, Lockeye, because he just goes like that. Is Clermont and his team the men to unlock the earning potential of the academy? That's actually a really, really good point, Willie. We have spoke for how many years now about Rangers trying to use this academy. We've got another manager coming in and saying if they're young, if they're good enough, they're young enough, they're old enough. It doesn't matter about the age. If they're good enough, I'm going to play them. We've heard that so many times. Is Clermont the man to do that?
Well, he certainly seems to have an authority about him, doesn't he? You know, he seems to have that aura about him. And look, it is important that the academy thrives, because if the academy doesn't thrive, you're just kind of throwing money into the fire, aren't you? Because at the end of the day, like, the academy's not free. You know, it's costing the club millions and millions of pounds every year. Obviously, they're spending a 7-figure fee on the women's team as well. So it's not like, you know, what we're doing is fine for us. You know, like, being a club in Scotland, like, you need to have saleable assets. Whether that's players that you're signing and improving and moving on, whether that is like Diamande in the future or maybe Redvan or whatever. But you also need to have academy players pushing through. Do you know? So it's important that if somebody like Zach Lovelace was to stay and push into the first team, then he's got a genuine value. You know, he could be a 3, 4, 5 million pound player if he was to push on and get to the level that some people think he could. Yet again, Bailey Rice. Bailey Rice could be somebody that's worth millions of pounds to Rangers. Do you know? And this is the thing, we have to make sure that we've got academy players that are pushing into the first team and that they have a value. Because the minute that you don't have that, it then becomes almost a market that you've just got to go out and sign young players for the first team and push them on and then you sell them. But you also want to have the other side of it where there's young players coming through from the academy and they have value as well. I mean, like, Leon King's value should be in the millions, but see, because he's played so little football in the last year, it's hard to know what Leon's value is. And that's the thing. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And it's really difficult. You see, at the time when Leon was playing in the Champions League, he was playing in the league. And I'm not saying we were maybe at our best at that point, because clearly that was really tough, that Champions League campaign for us. But Leon's value at that point was probably in the millions. Because he was a teenager, he was playing in the Rangers first team, he was playing Champions League football, and he was getting to play some league games for Rangers as well. But now, don't get me wrong, like, Leon will still have a value, but I don't think it'll be what it was even like 18 months ago. And that's the difficulty that Rangers have. I mean, Adam Devine's value, I don't know what Adam would be worth, maybe in the high 6 figures. Maybe you could maybe tip at a 7-figure fee, but it's probably in the high 6s, maybe 5, 6, 7, 800,000 pounds plus maybe a sell on. Because we're still talking about a Scotland under 21 international here. We're still talking about a guy that's played for Rangers first team. He's now playing, for Mullimo in the league. So, yeah, look, we really, really, really need to make sure that our best young players have value.
100%, 100%. Can I just say, rosters are pre-cooked. I know they are. I'm not middle class. I'm not upper class. I'm working class. I know what my burger. It just worries me that my
the cheeseburgers are normally quite nice.
See, I don't know. Because I'm middle class, I don't like them.
Right, okay.
She's using the toaster. She's 9. I'm just a very, very overprotective dad. Let's finish up, Willie, by speaking about Zach Lovelace. Again, out for a few months, another injury. He seems to be extremely. As soon as he gets anywhere near the first team, Willie, he's struck down with injury. Is it going to be a case, do you think, where it's just going to be unfortunate for Zach, and he's never? We should be talking about Zach now. See, especially with the injuries that we have up front. The fact that we're solely relying on Dessers. Even before he got his injury, we should have been talking about Zach maybe coming into this team, and he was nowhere near it. Is it going to be a case of it doesn't look like it's going to work for him, or do you think maybe next season is the kind of final chance for him to try and break in?
Well, see, the thing with Zach, I'm pretty sure Zach still has a year, right? I'm pretty sure Zach still has a year, but come this summer, Rangers need to decide if he's going to be here or not.
Mm-hmm.
So if Rangers offer him a deal and Zach basically says, no, I'm not staying, then at that point, Rangers need to sell him. Because we need
to make something back on him, don't we?
Yeah, look, we basically need to get a profit on Zach. and that money needs to then be sent back to the academy to put back into that level of trying to pick up, one or two players that can come in and improve us. I mean, I was heartbroken for Zach. Obviously, I'd bumped into him at the training ground after they'd come back from Antwerp, and he was basically saying, I think I'm going about for 6 to 8 weeks. And you were like, you don't know what to say to the kid, because, he'd been out for months, and it's because he's got that power and pace. Like, it must be difficult to stop you doing what Zach does, because of the way that he runs, because of the speed that he runs it, because of the way that he plays his game. It's such a high intensity level, and obviously he's still young, his body's still developing and stuff like that. And obviously, when you keep having these type of injuries, it must be soul destroying for him.
But not even that, Willie, but if we're looking at it, say he stays injury free next season and he breaks it into the first team, is he going to keep breaking down injuries next season? That's something that the club have to think about.
Yeah, 100%. That is a concern, because when players are continuing to get these muscle injuries because of the way that they play the game, it's one of those ones where the club need to consider everything. But clearly Zach's a high potential footballer. Anybody that's watched him from when he first came in at 16 would obviously tell you the quality that he possesses. But it is a concern that he keeps having these injuries, and they're not short term. It's not like he's out for a week or two. He's out for months. I mean, he's basically missed more than half of this season because of injury, and that's a huge worry. And yet again, I mean, he's right in what he's saying there. Is it the schedule? Is it the training? Like, do they need to maybe personalise Zach in terms of how he does things?
You would think that at the club that we are, at the facilities that we've got, the coaches that we've got, that would already surely be done.
Well, you would like to think so, but the fact that it keeps happening is a concern. And yet again, as I say, like, this summer's a huge summer for the academy. It could go one or two ways this summer, to be fair. If we lose some of our best academy players, then it's probably not going to be pretty at times next season. Because if you're losing Lovelace and you're losing Stevens, and maybe Bailey Rice does go out on loan, you're then probably losing 3 of your best academy players. And if guys like Aaron Lyle decide they're not wanting to be around here anymore, if Robbie Fraser decides he's going to move on, etc., you're losing a lot of good players. But they're doing it for the right reasons, because they want to go and play regularly.
Is it make or break then? Are you saying it's make or break next season for the academy?
I think you're probably going to see massive changes in the summer. I think there's a lot of players that are going to leave. Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of change in the summer. And I don't know how much recruitment we're actually going to do. That's the concern right now. So I really don't know what next season is going to bring. It could be good, it could be really bad. Because see if you're losing good players, it's really difficult to replace good players.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing I would always say. I mean, you see that at academy level when you watch like Dundee United playing other teams. You can see the players that stand out. See if you're losing those players, it's really difficult to replace them.
Aye.
It's really difficult to replace them.
Especially at that age. It's a lot easier, obviously, at under 15s, under 14s to get better players in. That's easy. It's the under 18s and the B team level and the reserve team levels. It's unless you've got finances, then it's impossible. And it shouldn't be about finance at academy level. It should be from the young.
Unfortunately now the way the world is with Brexit and stuff like that, that's really impacted the market in Scotland. Mm-hmm. Probably in the past, some of the guys that have moved to England this summer would have signed for Rangers or Celtic, because English teams would have just went out and signed the best Portuguese 16-year-olds, Spanish 16-year-olds, Italians, South American players. But at the moment, there's obviously a problem with Brexit, so they can't do that until they're 18 for most of these players. So now they're just handpicking the best Scottish players. In the past, Rangers would have probably picked up 1 or 2 players for Hamilton or Aberdeen or Motherwell or Hibs or Hearts, etc. But now that's not always the case. And there's also that part where you look at Hearts. Hearts are actually giving young players a chance in the first team. And so are Motherwell. And so are Kilmarnock. And so are Aberdeen. But Rangers really aren't in the overall scheme of things. If you look at the percentage of minutes, if you take out Ross McCausland this season, the minutes are poor. Really, really poor. And that's something that as a football club we need to do more about.
And it's a shame that the only time an academy prospect gets a chance is through injuries. It's not as if we're bringing through one, even one every couple of seasons. We're not doing that. We're only Ross McCausland's and like Ross has done brilliant since he's come in. But he's only in there because of injuries. That's the only reason he's getting anywhere near that first team.
Yeah, and that's a big reason why English clubs are now tapping into the market here. I mean, I think CGM's obviously asked the question. I mean, basically what happened is is in the past, you could basically sign anybody at 16 years old for any part of Europe. But the moment that like Britain dropped out of the EU, it then meant you couldn't sign the best 16-year-olds. So the English clubs were then in a situation where they had to look at the best players in Northern Ireland, the best players in England, the best players in Scotland. That's why some of the transfers from within the English market now are absolutely obscene. Like, you're seeing some 16-year-olds moving for £3 and £4 million, which is absolutely bonkers. But because the market is now like that, and these teams don't want to wait until somebody's 18, they're just start hoovering up the best young players in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, this summer again, there'll probably be 4, 5, 6 young Scottish players will move to England this summer.
Aye.
And that's really, really difficult. Do you know?
I get that. I completely get that. And look, Paul's saying, remember, Patterson got his chance for injuries. I get that, but are we going to sit here and say that? Are we going to, as a club, going to say to young players, come to us, you'll get a decent wage, and you'll get a chance if one of the first team players gets injured? That's the only way you've got a chance of getting into this first team. That's no way to sell coming to Rangers. That's no way to sell becoming being an academy prospect for Rangers. And by the way, you'll only get a chance if somebody gets injured. It really, really isn't.
See, the problem is we're in the same boat as English teams. We just can't go out and sign this, like the Spanish players at 16, 17 either. We're in the same boat. It's not like we can cheat the system and do what the English clubs can't. We can't do it either. So we're in a real disadvantage with that as well. I would take Thompson Ashaka. He had to wait until he was 18 before he could sign. Like, even though Rangers wanted to sign him prior to then, they couldn't.
No, but what I will say is they can come and live here.
Yeah, they can, but like, they physically can't play, they can't train, they can't do anything. And that's the huge difficulty. I mean, Rangers have had other African players over in trial in the last year or so, and they've looked like good players. But the reality is you need to wait until they're 18. And obviously we've tried to bring in players from America in the past. But yet again, they now need to be 18 before you can sign them.
There's a loophole. There's a loophole, by the way, and the reason that I said they can come and live here is there's a loophole for English clubs in that, but that's all I'm going to say on the matter.
Yeah, look, see in the coming years, I wouldn't be surprised to see that change. See the rules with the best 16-year-olds, because it's meaning that the best 16-year-olds are now staying in their own country. Like, they're staying in Holland, they're staying in Germany, and Spain, and Italy. I think that rule will eventually change. You see the pressure that will come for English teams to get that changed. Like, it will eventually happen. But you see the money that clubs can make from English teams from signing these 16-year-olds. It's obscene amounts of money. You know, as I said earlier on, some of these teams are paying millions and millions of pounds for 14, 15, 16-year-olds now. Millions of pounds. I mean, like, we couldn't even consider doing that at Rangers. Like, it's going to debate. So you have to wonder how long it's going to impact the leagues for. Because, see, eventually the English teams will force the issue, and you'll see that change, and it'll just open the market up, and English teams will just get stronger and stronger and stronger. And because I know
money goes to money.
Yeah, like, I mean, the only thing for us is it would probably help us maybe sign some players for Scotland again, because there's not as much competition for the English clubs, because they then go back and look at the best, talents in Europe again, rather than scouring Scotland all the time. That would be the only benefit for Rangers potentially. But until that happens, it is going to be extremely difficult to keep the best young Scottish players in the country, because English clubs can just offer more money.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
I've enjoyed it.
I wasn't expecting another 15 minutes, but I don't even know. See, like, when you say to me, "Oh, do you want to go to this game and that game?" and I say to my missus, she goes, "Nah, because you'll not be back till about 4 hours after the game, because you and Wally don't shut up." But I know, I appreciate that. But like I say, we're going to try and do this as often as possible. But if we leave it a few weeks between them, we can get a bit more of a discussion. So it's not just the same stuff that we're rehashing every single week. Thank you to every single person who's tuned in, by the way. It was great numbers tonight. Absolutely love it. Thank you for all the support. Whatever you're watching on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, follow, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Tell your mates about it. The Rangers Rabble, you'll get women's shows, you'll get academy stuff. Of course, you'll get first team stuff. You'll get debates, all sorts of stuff. But I'm really going to have to go because my throat's about to go. So thank you, every single person, for watching. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you, William. And like I say, if you're on YouTube, excuse me, keep an eye on that community tab so you know exactly when we're going to be on. Apart from tonight, that was my fault. Apologies. Make sure you're, like I say, keep an eye on the socials so you know exactly what's happening. with the podcast. So thank you all for watching, and we'll speak to you again very, very soon.